The Life and Contributions of Francis Galton by Jimmy Berkner. Eugenics is the study of the agencies under social control that improve or impair the racial qualities of future generations, either physically or mentally. Sir Francis Galton. Francis Galton was born on February 16, 1822, near Sparkbrook, Birmingham, in the UK. His father, Samuel, was statistical and scientific, much like his father before him. Francis described him as a very kind and honorable man. His mother, Violetta, was a methodical and affectionate woman, according to Francis. Both of Galton's parents encouraged him to pursue medicine as a career. He attributes his taste for poetry, science, and statistics to his parents, grandparents, and cousins. Galton was the youngest of 7 children. He had 3 older brothers and 3 older sisters. His sister Adele was his teacher for the first years of his childhood. She taught him the Bible, Latin, and a great deal of English verse. Galton was also familiar with Scott, Milton, the Iliad, and the Odyssey at a very young age and could quote all of them. Francis attended several schools after this to get the education his father and mother wanted him to have, but at each of these schools he explained how he learned nothing because he could not learn in traditional ways and did not desire to learn traditional subjects. Rather, Galton was into English reading, math, and science. Per his parents' wishes, Galton began his journey in medicine, interning under Mr. Baker at Birmingham General Hospital, where he eventually became a clerk. He planned to become a doctor after this and attended King's College to study medicine for 1 year. After this, Galton took some time to travel. He toured the continent on a line of credit given to him by his father. Through his travels, he gained an immense amount of experience. When he returned home, he attended Trinity College in Cambridge for medicine, but soon after changed his major to mathematics, after he had taken a course with William Hopkins. He never finished his degree here, though, because his father grew ill and passed away. Galton was left a large inheritance from his father and decided his days of being a student were over. He used this inheritance to travel. After this, he spent 5 years devoted to hunting, or sport. Then he decided to travel again, and this time he visited Southwest Africa, where he spent a few years exploring. When Galton returned home, he married Louisa Jane Butler. They had a happy marriage of 44 years, but never had any children, though they both wanted them. Many think this is what fueled his obsession with genetics and reproduction. Galton continued to travel throughout Europe in his later years. He received numerous awards and became a member of many societies. The Prime Minister offered to submit his name to the King for a knighthood, which he described as the highest honor he experienced, in 1909. He was a very humble man through his entire life. The older he got, the more his health failed him. Francis passed away on the 17th of January in 1911 at the age of 88. Galton is most well known for his studies in eugenics and human intelligence. He is known as the father of eugenics and coined the term eugenics. Galton wrote and published 9 books and roughly 200 papers during his lifetime. Galton was first cousins with Charles Darwin, and Darwin's The Origin of Species had a major impact on Galton that turned him from geographical and religious concerns to psychological and biological research. After this, Galton began to develop theories on inherited traits. He built off of Darwin's ideas of biological evolution of species and developed a hierarchy of ranked classes, races, and nations. He used racism as a framework for his ranking system, grading men on a scale from A to G, G being the highest or most genius of the men, and A being the lowest. He found a normal distribution or bell curve that suggested the majority of people are in mediocre classes in relation to intelligence testing, and concluded that the vast majority of mediocrity and only a few geniuses was not by chance, but was due to hereditary forces. He claimed to have found that the higher-graded individuals were predominantly upper-class Northern Europeans, and that the African-American race failed to produce any geniuses throughout all of history. He wrote Hereditary Talent and Character in 1865 and Hereditary Genius in 1869. In these, Galton explained his belief that it was the duty of those in power to breed out the feeble and breed in those who are noble and social. He thought that people with lower intelligence, the people that he had graded low on his hierarchy of ranked races, should not be able to reproduce, and that noble humans, such as himself or other upper-class Northern Europeans with higher intelligence, should be selected to continue reproducing so that the population eventually would weed out all of the feeble people and the world would be more intelligent. Galton wanted the government to have eugenics programs that would limit breeding numbers and numbers of inferior races. He concluded from his work that general mental ability is passed down or inherited the same way as physical traits. He was one of the first experimental psychologists and was a founder of the field called differential psychology, which is the study of the differences between people. Most intelligence testing that is done today roots back to Galton's ideas of individual differences and heritability. He was able to determine that intelligence was hereditary. Galton's research aimed to explain the foundations of intellectual ability. He believed that human intelligence could be measured scientifically. He attempted to use reaction time tests to do this. Today, intelligence testing mostly consists of IQ tests. Galton's methods proved to be inaccurate measurements of intelligence, but he was the first to realize individual differences and heritability were related. Galton studied phenotypical resemblance in families. He was known for his analysis of pedigrees. He was the first to study monozygotic twins or identical twins to discover the influence of their genetics on behavior. He introduced a twin method that became a major factor in behavioral and quantitative genetics. He is, because of that, also known as the father of behavioral genetics. His methods for studying twins are still used today to try and figure out environmental and genetic backgrounds of a vast array of traits that range from intelligence to alcohol dependence. Galton's research with sweet pea seeds, where he discovered changes in size from one generation to the next, led to him calling this phenomenon reversion, which he later changed to regression. Galton also invented the word association test to explore the hidden recesses of the mind. This is giving participants a group of words and asking them to report the first word that came to mind with each word read. Galton is also known as the father of psychometrics, which is the study of behavioral traits. He developed numerous methods, including the correlation coefficient, which developed into linear regression. This was later linked to bivariate normal distribution. Correlation in psychology today is used to measure the association between two continuous variables, an independent and a dependent. Galton's investigation on the effect of heredity on intellectual abilities was noted for its use of law of errors, which is today called normal distribution. He was the first to figure out that normal distribution could be applied to human psychological attributes such as intelligence. This bell-shaped normal distribution curve still exists today. It is used in statistical reports such as quality control and survey analysis, and it describes the distribution of a dataset. Galton also made important contributions to the fields of anthropology, meteorology, and physical anthropology. He created methods of mapping weather and coined the term anticyclone. Weather maps are still used every day to show precipitation, clouds, pressure, wind, and temperature. Galton was the first to explore Southwest Africa and the northern half of Namibia. When he returned home, he wrote the first edition of his book, Art of Travel, in 1855. Galton founded biometrics. This is the measurement and analysis of human characteristics such as fingerprints that can be used to identify a person. He is a major contributor to fingerprinting as a forensic method. He established a fingerprint classification system still used today. Galton was also the first person to study fingerprinting. During his anthropological studies, he noticed that every person's fingerprints were unique and was the first to comprehensively examine them. He concluded that they could be used for purposes of identification. This was the foundation for the use of fingerprints in forensic purposes in crimes. Today, fingerprinting is used as a chemical test to show genetic makeup of a person that can be used as evidence in courts. It can also be used to identify bodies and track down blood relatives. Perhaps Galton's most important contribution was his realization that science needs math and not words. He was one of the founders of the science of statistics. He helped found the statistical methods used today in numerous fields, including human genetics, meteorology, mapping, geography, biometrics, psychology, and anthropology. He spent a large portion of his life studying heredity and eugenics.